Hey kids, it's time to tap into the power of Destrucity with WWF Wrestlemania Challenge for the Nintendo Entertainment System. That sounded god-awful. WrestleMania Challenge is the 1990 follow-up to the 1989 misfire of a video game that is WrestleMania for the NES. Right away, your eyes are focused less on the cover artwork and more on the rainbow of death in the corner. But put down your pitchforks, boys and girls, because unlike the previous NES effort, which was more of a non-effort than anything else, WrestleMania Challenge is actually not that bad. Hell, you could say that it's fairly good. Not great, but good enough. Let's dwell into this a bit. WrestleMania Challenge gives you 8 WWF superstars to play with, and it's a pretty solid roster of talent, including the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Macho King, Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, Ravishing Rick Rude, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the Big Boss Man, and Brutus Beefcake. Now, in addition to that packed roster of talent, you also have a generic wrestler named Yourself. Now, in my years of playing wrestling catch-up and watching old DVD sets, I've never heard of anyone named Yourself. Maybe it was some preliminary wrestler or someone that helped out with the game. I mean, it's not uncommon. Bret Hart allegedly helped out with the WrestleMania arcade game I've seen in these couple of clips here a couple years later. Look how that game turned out.
Is that alright?
Okay, bad example. Strangely, Yourself is the only character whom two players could play as at the same time, but the character cannot be controlled by the CP. Oh, I see. This is supposed to be you. Yeah, right. Not happening anytime soon. Sorry. WrestleMania Challenge is packed with a number of game modes. A singles match, tag team match, or even a Survivor Series mode, or rather a 6-man elimination tag match. There's also the usual championship run where you fight the rest of the roster to win the WWF Championship, but you can only play as yourself in this mode. Picking any other superstar will result in a quick singles exhibition match, although regardless of mode, if you lose, the game will prompt you to rematch. This is kind of baffling, as you'd think that players would rather play as Hulk Hogan to reclaim the title, or maybe play as Warrior and have him retain the title against all his challengers, or have Savage reclaim it, or have Andre have his one moment that lasts more than a couple of minutes, or even guide a guy who's never held the title like Rude or Beefcake or Bossman or Duggan. But alas, LJN and specifically Rare, the designers of the game, thought it'd be best that players would rather win the belt as themselves rather as someone people might actually remotely care about. Which probably explains why there's no Honky Tonk Man here. Don't tell him I said that. He might cry about it on his podcast or something. In terms of the wrestling, it's far improved from the previous WrestleMania debacle and its entirely strike-based gameplay mechanics. You now have a strike button and a grapple button. Well, it's not much of a grapple button, but rather a grab button, as in grab your opponent and toss him somewhere, like a body slam. Controls are much more responsive than the previous game, which isn't saying much, but at the very least it's somewhat playable and easier to pull off moves. So it isn't a chore to climb up the top rope or pin an opponent for that matter. It's all nice and simple, and most importantly, it works! No doubt the roster is so overjoyed by this revelation that when they win a match, they triumphantly jump in the air like they're on a trampoline or something. That's actually kind of cute, although I don't think Andre would ever jump that high, not without cracking the earth or something. The moveset for each wrestler are mostly the same, but at the very least each wrestler has various moves to distinguish each other. Rick Rude has the Rude Awakening, Jim Duggan has the 3-point stance across the ring and knocks himself out if he misses. You know, the little things that matter. So clearly there was some effort in making the game better than what came before. Although I find it strange that they never gave Hulk Hogan the leg drop of doom, instead opting for an elbow drop sort of moves. Oh well. Still, the variety is nice, and it shows that there's some effort in righting the wrongs of the previous game. The wrestlers are small, but there's enough detail to the sprite work that you could recognize who's who. Hell, Macho Man makes life easier by wrestling with his shades and bandana on. What a guy. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Macho King. Sorry, you know. The ring feels a bit big for the wrestlers of those size, but it's alright. At the very least, it looks like an arena overall and not a TNA house show. I mean, just a wrestling ring in the void of space. Yeah, that's what I meant. I did not meant to imply that that's how actual TNA house shows look. No, not at all. No. I'm really gonna get it now. There's quite a bit of flicker that takes place at times, but whether it be tag partners in reserve or shenanigans behind the ring ropes, a piss off for capturing footage, but it's not nearly as bad when you're actually playing the game. Like before, wrestlers' theme musics play during the matches, and they're much more competently done this time around, with most wrestlers retaining their actual theme musics instead of weird substitutions like the previous game. The renditions are also fairly catchy in this one, so clearly there's some care taken in this second iteration of sports entertainment on the NES. As for the sound effects, well, they're alright, nothing special. The WWF hasn't had a spotless history on the NES. WrestleMania was a severe letdown compared to earlier pro wrestling games such as, well, Pro Wrestling. And though I have not played them myself, from what I hear, Steel Cage Challenge and King of the Ring fared no better later on. But at the very least, WWF fans were served with at least one decent game in the form of WrestleMania Challenge. It's not the best or even deepest wrestling game on the NES, far from it, but at the very least it's not horse manure. The limited championship mode and cruiserweight gameplay might not give this game much in terms of replay value, but it's pretty decent for what it is, it plays well, and there's quite a bit of fun to be had here nonetheless. Overall, NES enthusiasts looking for a decent WWF video game on the console should give WrestleMania Challenge a shot. Hey, it's not exactly WrestleFest, but it's still a fun game nonetheless, and considering what came before, a substantial step up.